Davey D hanging out with you this afternoon, and as we all know, over the weekend, devastation took place in the country of Chile. 8.8 earthquake. Fortunately, that country is used to having earthquakes, so they had a lot of buildings that were able to withstand this natural disaster, but it's still been very devastating for a lot of folks. And one of our comrades, who is from Chile, you know them, they're no strangers to Hard Knock Radio. We're talking about the group Rebel Diaz, featuring Rodstarz, who's on the phone line with us. Rod, how you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm over here in the studio with G1.
Okay, so you with your brother?
Yes, sir.
Let me ask you, man, what did you think when you got news of the quake?
Well, actually, when we got the first thing, we were devastated because we just came back from there. We were there, Rebel Diaz, us, me, G, and Tere were over there in Chile like a week ago. We just got back. And we had been out there. We were building with the people, with the young people, doing workshops. And in the actual city that the epicenter of is in Concepcion, in Chile, we have a huge hip-hop community out there that had just held a big hip-hop. It's called Conce Graph. And they did a mural about us, and they did a mural, for us out there. And so it was just a shock. And, of course, the concern that always happens when you have these natural disasters, the concern for our communities, basically as a result of what Chile's history is, there's a lot of poor communities, a huge, disparity in the economic distribution. So,
is it that way in Chile?
Of course. I mean, that was our first concern. You know what I'm saying? It was just like what's happening with our family and what that means for the poor people of Chile, what this devastation means.
Now, when I talked to you the day after, a few hours afterwards, we were in the middle of the tsunami warning, and you hadn't heard from a lot of your family. Have you heard from those people that were missing since then?
Basically, we finally got a hold of my grandfather, who was the main one we were most concerned about. He's 90 years old. He lives by himself, no internet or cell phone. So we were very concerned about him. But, it's Latin America, and there's the very practice of taking care of your neighbor is happening out there. So people are helping each other out. The neighbors took my grandfather in and made sure he was okay. So we finally got a hold of him via a neighbor that had Facebook. But yeah, more than anything, we still have family, which is a city that supposedly they're saying is 90% gone. So we're still waiting on hearing from family from Curicó. That's where my mother was born. So all her cousins and stuff like that, we still haven't heard from. No. So we just trying to stay positive and be proactive. We're gonna be having some events here at the Rebel Diaz Arts Collective here in the Bronx, hip hop for Chile, and
Let me ask you this: there's always a politicized motivation when these types of things happen. Authors and activists like Naomi Klein talk to us about the shock doctrine, and she talked about while people are in shock, watch the moves that they make. And we saw the type of moves they've been making in Haiti. We've had people down there, supplies weren't getting to folks, and it seems like it's just a takeover. What's the politics with Chile, and do we need to be worried about similar scenarios?
Well, first of all, to understand the politics of Chile, we have to understand the history of what's happening in Chile. To understand the history, you have to look at the first September 11th, 1973. Which is, the beginning of a military dictatorship, a bloody military dictatorship that for 17 years imposes a neoliberal economic model, right? And under that model, basically there's privatization, the taking of resources, the taking of indigenous land, multinational corporations coming in. So to understand the economy, so we have to understand that Chile, for one, has a history of oppressors that are CIA and U.S. funded, and also is basically an economic experiment, of neoliberalism, which is basically capitalism, which is, more privatization across, more globalization, and it's a control of the people. So when we see the earthquake hit, for example, we see images now of supposed people, Chilean people looting. There's a huge economic disparity. There's a huge, history of that, and we're seeing the results of it. You know what I'm saying? For example, the highways that we saw crashing down, right? The roads that were destroyed, a lot of those are, roads that were built as final attempts, by the last government to try to look good. So what did they do? They built highways with cheap materials, because they did it through privatization. They built, highways that aren't standing. Some of these roads were built by the military dictatorship. Some of these roads in the South, these highways, were like, the new economy, the new model. That's what Chile was being called, the tiger of the South, right? Because of this economy. And a lot of it, like we're seeing, is a farce. We're seeing these highways. It's a result of that. So, our whole thing is that the history of Chile is a very unique one in the sense that it has been used as one of the first, models for neoliberalism, and it was used to a very bloody dictatorship and dictatorships that were similar in the whole region, in Argentina and Brazil. This is something that was going on. This is U.S. intervention in Latin America. These are examples of what we have. So a lot of people don't know that history. So when you see earthquakes like this, it's interesting, because, for example, like when you have a new president that's coming into power, let's not forget, 9/11 happens, and then you have an iron fist leader like George Bush come into power. Right now, we have an iron fist leader coming in the Sebastián Pineda, the new president that was elected, who's the right-wing president. So you have to have, now it's understandable that there's militarization going on in the South. That right now the military troops were sent to the South to control people looting, which is really people that don't have access to resources, much like we were seeing in Haiti. There's even talk of them saying that their economy is strong enough that they don't need international assistance. Like, our military's got this. That's what's coming out from Chile. Wow. So while they're trying to stand, have this strong image to the rest of the world, there's also militarization of indigenous land that's going on. Who are the people in the South? Who are the people that were hit by the epicenter of the earthquake? The people in Concepcion, in Talca, in Curicó, and some of the smaller towns. These are small. These are people from smaller towns, smaller communities, rural areas. These are Mapuche communities, indigenous communities that are being struck by this. Whose now their territories are being militarized. So it's interesting to see.
So it is kind of a land grab, except it's not an external one; it's an internal one because it's already been supported by us.
Pretty much.
Wow.
Pretty much.
Wow. Okay. Well.
So we're interested in seeing what comes out of this, what the response is, and also, it's also interesting to see some of the conversations that are going on the social networks. You know what I'm saying?
Well, give us an example. What have you been seeing?
There's been a lot of people comparing Haiti, the situation of Haiti, to the situation in Chile. You have the race issue being brought up. Some of our, other folks, talking about addressing the situation from an outside perspective. Looking at it like, there's not a lot of black people in Chile, so this is, we shouldn't, worry about that. We should focus on Haiti, or bringing up economy, saying, their economy is better, so this okay. We don't have to worry about Chile. Or other folks even, bringing up, differences like that I feel are divide and conquer tactics being used at its best. So it's also interesting to see the responses and the dialogue that's brought up by a lot of the comments.
Definitely.
So really, all we can say is we hope that people show solidarity from all over. That in Chile there's a history of resistance in our country. There's a history of struggle, and there's also a history of solidarity. Some of the Chilean revolutionaries, died in Bolivia with Che Guevara. Some Chilean revolutionaries, have been in Cuba, in Nicaragua, in Angola. So understanding that we have to learn our history and see the connection of our struggle. We also, have to keep continuing having solidarity with Haiti, and continue, the work being done to understand the effects of what's happening, in the world, and also continue working in solidarity with each other, for the Black and Brown community.
Rodstarz.
Davey D hanging out with you this afternoon, and as we all know, over the week a lot of buildings that were able to withstand this natural disaster, but it's still been very devastating for a lot of folks. And one of our comrades, who is from Chile, you know them, they're no strangers to Hard Knock Radio. We're talking about the group Rebel Diaz, featuring Rodstarz, who's on the phone line with us. Rod, how you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm over here in the studio with G1.
Devastation took place in the country of Chile. 8.8 earthquake. Fortunately, that country is used to having earthquakes, so they had
International.